So, VK on the beat, check. I'm in Toronto where you wanna get the city love. I'm from Toronto where you wanna get the city love. I'm in Toronto like we wanna get the city love. My city love me back for my city love.
Welcome to episode 1538 of Toronto Mic'd, proudly brought to you by Great Lakes Brewery, a fiercely independent craft brewery who believes in supporting communities, good times, and brewing amazing beer. Order online for free local home delivery in the GTA. Palma Pasta. Enjoy the taste of fresh, homemade Italian pasta and entrees from Palma Pasta in Mississauga and Oakville. The Toronto Maple Leafs baseball team, the best baseball in the city, outside the Dome, with 8 championships since 1967. It's playoff time, people. Get yourselves to Christie Pitts. RecycleMyElectronics.ca. Committing to our planet's future means properly recycling our electronics of the past. And Ridley Funeral Home, pillars of the community since 1921. Today, making his Toronto Mic debut, is Raving Mojos singer Blair Richard Martin. Blair, how are you?
Not too bad. Can you see me okay?
Yeah, you're coming in like a titch hot, like just a little bit.
Okay, so what meaning what? You want me to turn the light down?
Oh, no, not the light. What microphone are you using?
Oh, okay. You know what? Let me just give me a sec. You know what? I'm just using the computer.
Oh, you know what? Then just back off a little bit, like a little. Yeah, like let me hear you.
Oh, okay.
Oh, that's fine. You sound great. How you doing, buddy?
All right.
Good to meet you.
Yeah, you likewise.
So, if you're okay, we're gonna roll. I just want to. I have a lot of questions for you because Steve Kane came over, the first and last punk rock president, and we're just chatting, and he tells me his favorite band of all time is the Raving Mojos.
Oh, really?
Yeah, his favorite band of all time. This is Steve Kane, formerly of Warner. Now he's retired. But then I'm talking, so this comes up in conversation, and a listener of Toronto Mic'd, Blair Packham, he's listening. And let me go to the note he sent me. I'm just setting the table here for everybody. So Blair Packham lets me know that the Jitters, his band, the Jitters and the Raving Mojos would gig together all the time. He once produced a demo of yours. He talked about your brother was the Jitters drummer and that you were the drummer with Teenage Head. And then I realized how little I know about the Raving Mojos. So I'd love to just shut up and listen. Blair, can you set the table? Like, I mean, give me as much detail as you can, but set the table, like what made you get into music? Tell me all about the Raving Mojos. Do you mind if I just sit back, listen, and then I'll rudely interrupt?
No, certainly. Just ask questions as you go.
Okay, great. So take me back to the beginning, like where you're from, Toronto?
Okay, I was born in Toronto. My parents are immigrants from England. They came here in the 50s. My father took a job. He missed out on a good job here. And as a result, he took a job in the States. So I grew up in Chicago and Newark, New Jersey, until I was 11. We came back 1970. Yeah, 11. And so, yeah, but other than that, yeah, I've grown up. I'm a downtown Toronto guy. I grew up at, my experience in Toronto is Bay and Bloor.
Okay.
I lived in the Manulife Center. I'm a sort of an upper middle class guy. A contemporary with the Rosedale, with rich kids from Rosedale. Really, that's my scene. That's where I come from. But it's downtown. It's a very interesting place to come from because it's downtown Toronto in the 1970s.
Right.
Of course, I grew up with music. Music was the real centerpiece of I think youth culture in the 60s and 70s, and I'm a complete victim of that. That's these are the heroes. This is what you wanted to do. And I am just the right age that I caught the punk rock revolution. That Toronto, a very interesting place in that time because I guess we didn't really have a great hippie scene. The hippie scene missed us, but punk rock, we were right on time, and we had, a really great underground culture scene here based around, I don't know, do you know Gary Top?
Of course, he's been over here.
And
Yeah.
Okay. Gary Top and the Roxy Theater and the scene that came in and around that and all Gary Top and all that contemporary, they were 60s guys, a little older than myself. They set the table, they set a scene, and we were really out ahead. Toronto as a city was really out ahead culturally from just about any place in the world. For example, when Gary Top brought the Ramones here in September of 1976, this was the first place in North America that they had played outside of New York City. They played in London. That I don't want to that first album was out and people were hearing it. But this is the first place they played outside of New York City in North America. And so those shows that over the 2 nights at the New Yorker Theater, is historic. And I mean, it was a theater full of people with their mouths agape, looking at something completely new. And I was one of them, and lucky enough to be one of them. And, it followed from there. I was a drummer. I played in a local band, the Androids, who later went and moved to New York City and became Smashed Gladys. I don't know if they ever meant much here, but they certainly, if you look back, they obviously had some audience in the United States, and two very talented people, Bart Lewis and Sally Cato, as she later became. No, I didn't know her as Sally. I knew her as Karen, but she's known as Sally Cato, and two very talented people. And I played with them. And then I got a band together with some friends. We were trying to get a band together in 1980, and we didn't have a singer. And I was going to be the drummer, and the piano player said, hey, I think you could probably sing, and I'll play the drums. And that's what we did. That only lasted about a year. But by that time, I was really confident in what I was doing. And being the lead singer in a band, being a front man was what I really wanted to do. And I was writing songs. I had been picking up, guitars, but mostly the bass guitar and playing, single notes on the bass guitar that represented the chords and writing songs that way. And a friend of mine and I, for about a year, while I was still playing with the Androids, we were trying to get a band together. And eventually we met Kurt Schefter. And after a couple of drummers, we reconnected with my old friend Miles Dutton, who is by no means a minor talent, a very talented guy. And we got a band together with Kurt Schefter, Ken Fox, who now he's been playing for 20 years, lives in New York, and he's been playing with the Flesh Tones, the world famous Flesh Tones. And for about 5 years, we were part of what's called the second wave of punk bands. That is, hardcore was beginning to happen, and that was the predominant hard rock scene in the underground clubs in Toronto. And although we were a traditional kind of want to be the Rolling Stones kind of rock and roll band, that's the scene we were part of. Like, for example, we knew the Bunch of Fucking Goofs. Steve and I to this day I just saw him recently, and we're good friends, and we were contemporary, and we used to hang around in the booze cans that were put on. And and for 5 years we bucked the style, and really did We were the Raving Mojos.
Where did the name come from, Raving Mojos?
Oh, okay. Well, we were really desperately looking for a name, and in traditions like, you go back and you look through all the old albums, like we were, okay, should we name ourselves after the first Alice Cooper record, or should we name ourselves this or that? And Ken Fox and I were using the word mojo as a sort of we were using it as an adjective, actually. And sort of like, that is, oh wow, like, remember he went to see Jonathan Richman, and he was really impressed with his leadership qualities. So he would say, wow, he was really mojo. Or, yeah, and so that was a word we were using. And I remember we said, oh, well, like, is it the first or second? I can't remember. Was the first or second Alice Cooper album? It's called Easy Action. And, we were talking, I said, oh, so I think somebody suggested that as a possible name. And I said, Kurt said, no, that makes it sound like a couple of, like, some gay hustlers. And I said, all right, that's it. And I remembered an old bootleg by Pink Floyd, which was called Raving and Drooling. So I amalgamated Raving Mojos. And I said, that's the name of you don't like anything? Nobody likes anything? Raving Mojos is the name.
Love it. Now you said, raving and drooling. Then I think of the Killjoys, Rave and Drool, and that's Gene Champagne was in that band. And the current drummer for Teenage Head, and these are Teenage Head drumsticks right here, by the way, is Gene Champagne from Killjoys.
Oh, okay.
Just a fun little loop, these.
Yeah, no, definitely. I'm sure it's a similar etymological story,
right. Right. So at some point we'll find out how you were drumming for Teenage Head. We'll get there. But it sounds, hearing you talk about it, because I wasn't around for this scene. I was around, but I was like listening to like Raffi and Big Bird and Oscar. But
so you're younger.
I'm a bit younger to be around this punk scene that you.
I just turned 65. So.
Okay, I just turned 50. So we got that's a key 15 years now. Now, hearing you talk about the Ramones playing the New Yorker, that was a Gary's. So Gary Cormier and Gary Topp separately, but they've both been over here to kind of. I love hearing the stories of them bringing the Ramones to town and the Police to the Horseshoe and 9 people showing up and all this stuff. But that sounds like when I read rock documentaries and books, and I read about when the Sex Pistols played in like England, and like 100 bands formed that night. You know what I mean? Like it sounds like we had a scene here, but I was led to believe maybe Toronto was kind of boring and milquetoast for the Raving Mojos, and that you guys were like an outlier.
We were, but we weren't.
Okay.
Our crowd was really, hungry for this. Teenage Head was no longer playing the downtown clubs. The Violetones were kind of interesting in that sense, because you'd go to these Violetone shows, and there would be all these kids with piercings and mohawks, and who really didn't understand the roots of the music at all. They had learned it they really only knew the later English bands, and they thought, like, I don't even remember the name. Like, I'm trying to remember the name of the one, UK Subs. I remember they thought UK Subs, who wouldn't even know what they sound like. These were the big bands for them. They like this whatever it was, burgeoning hardcore type music, and they really didn't know the origins of it. They had rejected. They had been kids who had rejected the New York Dolls and the Stooges and that early iteration of garage rock and roll, and they had caught up. This was different. They were different. So it was funny. You'd go to the Violetones show, and the Violetones, we would know them, and they would be into all the same things we were into, but the crowd was listening to something different. So we were together at the parties and together at the get-togethers and to booze cans, but it was very fragmented in terms of actual taste and ideas about what this music was about. There was somebody like myself. We were sort of like the Lou Reed type. Give me an issue and I'll give you a tissue. don't really care about politics. And then there were kids who were really into what we now know as radical social justice issues. So yeah, I mean, it was fragmented, but it was together. It was a together scene where we would all be in the same place, but there were very fragmented opinions, very fragmented tastes. It was an odd time. Yeah. And that is, I'm talking specifically about the second wave of punk. Those guys, they wrote that book about it. That big coffee table book, Tomorrow is Too Late.
Yes.
Yeah.
Jason Schneider. Jason,
yeah.
And I think maybe Michael Barclay had a role in this.
Yeah.
But yeah, absolutely. Okay. Love this so much. So the Raving Mojos is basically 1980 to 85, around that, right?
It would be, I remember we were just getting the band together, and my just recently, the girl that I've been living with, she just broken up with her, and she called me up on the phone to let me know that John Lennon had been assassinated. So it was and that was one of the first Raving Mojo rehearsals.
You want to hear a fun little, again, as these thoughts enter my head, I'll just spit them out at you, Blair. But that same day, December 8th, 1980, the day John Lennon was shot, the Garys were presenting the Spoons at the Edge, and it's the very first time that Rob Pruce played keyboards with the Spoons that very night. Just a lot of stuff seemed to be going on that night in Toronto.
Oh, well, wow.
So
you know what? That's funny you mentioned the Spoons. My first gig as a singer was opening up for the Spoons.
Get out of here. Was that in Burlington? Where was that?
Yeah, it was in Oakville. What was that for? The something or other in the I don't want to get the name wrong.
I wish I could bail you out on this one.
Yeah, but anyway, it was a hotel. It was a club in a hotel in Oakville.
And how old were you at that point? Although, I mean, the Spoons...
20 years old.
Okay, amazing. I mean, they're still going. The little Gord and Sandy are still going. You can still catch the Spoons.
Wow, yeah.
And Rob Pruce, you can find him in my basement once a month, co-hosting Toast episodes of Toronto Mic'd. So.
Oh, cool. Cool.
No, this has been cool. So I have more questions, obviously. Like, one question I have, this punk band, the Raving Mojos, popular live attraction here in Toronto for a certain crowd looking for that kind of rock and roll. Could they get radio airplay anywhere?
No, we couldn't. That was one of the we could not attract anything. Well, I mean, you know what? That's not completely true, because we had friends in Hamilton, for example, and people who used to come see our shows, who were really big fans. So we would go do the college radio at McMaster, with Bruce Mowat. Okay. And but in Toronto, no, not till years later did we do anything on Toronto radio.
Like not even. Go ahead.
And the Now magazine largely ignored us as well. We were the first people to take out a recruitment advertising space with Now. We were some of the first, private people. We would take out our own Raving Mojos at the, Hotel Isabella or Larry's Hideaway, whatever. We would take out these little $50 ads with them, but they were affordable then. They were just starting up.
Right.
And but they really just didn't. I remember approaching them once because we were playing with a band called the Hoodoos, who later became Living Proof, and I remember one of us went to Now magazine and said, "Hey, you should write about these couple bands and the fact that we're attracting pretty fair audiences." And no, we're not. We don't write about particular scenes, I think was the story.
So it sounds like the mainstream is rejecting the Raving Mojos. So because you can't get not even CKLN or CIUT, like you can't get any Toronto radio airplay. Even the Alt Weekly doesn't touch you unless you pay for like an ad in the back there with the escort services and everybody. It sounds.
Yeah.
And obviously, it goes without saying, the Toronto Sun, the Toronto Star, the Globe and Mail, they're not writing about you, are they?
Jonathan Gross did.
Okay. Go ahead.
He wrote an article. He had a nephew, I think it's a nephew or a cousin, who went to Jarvis Collegiate, which was the high school that our guitar player went to. And we were playing at the Jarvis Collegiate sock hop. And this cousin dragged Jonathan Gross up. And so there's a big article on it. He said, the Nazareth concert at the Gardens was shit. So we went to higher ground. And we went up to the Jarvis Collegiate Sock Hop where, for $5, there was a really good rock and roll show of some guys who really know their history. Basically, that was the gist of the article. And he was doing a TV show on CBC at the time. He tried to do something with us, but it didn't gel, and his idea didn't come off, so we sort of abandoned it. But Jonathan Gross was supportive. Yeah.
It's funny. This is the second episode of my podcast, Toronto Mike, in a row in which Jonathan Gross was mentioned, because my last episode was with Peter Gross, and we talked about Jonathan Gross playing in a band called the Battered Newsmen. And then I reminded Peter the fun fact, which he couldn't remember, but do you watch Seinfeld? You know your Seinfeld references?
No, not really,
okay.
But
so neither did Peter. But the Fusilli Jerry episode, so the episode Fusilli Jerry, I think that's the Ass Man episode if you're a Kramer fan. But basically, long story short, Jonathan Gross helped write that. His sister Marjorie Gross, who's sadly no longer with us, she was a co-writer of this episode of Seinfeld.
Oh, wow.
There you go.
Yeah, I didn't know that.
Blair, I'm full of fun facts for you here. Okay, so now... obviously, you're not you're an independent band, right? Like, so how do you finance recordings? And tell me a little bit about how a fan of the Raving Mojos could, bring home an album and play it on their hi-fi stereo.
Well, they couldn't until 2000 and what was it? 2004, I think we put out the CD. No, what was happening then? And I think this is where we kind of missed it. Although we had our own, we did have an independent cassette tape that we released, 5 songs which we recorded because we did a film, which you can see now on YouTube. It's called Mannish Boy, and it's directed by Paul Fox, who is a well-known and successful director of film and television now. He directed Schitt's Creek and some of those episodes, and some episodes of that I forget what it was called, the Anne of Green Gables, the last Anne of Green Gables show. My name is Emily. I can't remember the name. I'm not going to pretend. I'm not going to. But he directed some of those episodes, and he directed a film which won some awards at these Scream horror festivals. And yeah, one of the first things he did was he got some money, and we did a film. And part of the thing was we were shooting at the Turning Point, and we had time left over. The Comfort Sound, Doug McClellan was there with the Comfort Sound mobile unit. And we just went ahead, we played 5 songs, and that's as much tape as we had. And so we had this tape that circulated for 4 years, which, people remember really fondly. I guess some people still have it. I don't know if anybody's ever posted that online, and I don't know if I have anything other than I don't know if I have a copy of it somewhere, because I have all the stuff here on all the master tapes and stuff.
Well, this is what I'm asking. So obviously when I learned, that I missed the Raving Mojos, and then I heard from people I trust and people I've talked to, they're like, yeah, they were a damn great band. Mike, I'm sorry you were wasting your time with Raffi, okay? The Raving Mojos were in your very city. But then, of course, what do? I go to YouTube and I'm like, I got to hear some. There is a little here and there, but there's not a lot. And what we have is like, it sounds like it's like a sixth generation cassette dub or something. Like it sounds pretty potato. And I was like, oh, I wonder if Blair has any decent recordings I could digitize and kind of save and share. But I don't know. You have master tapes.
You know what? I'll try and get you something, because we do have the CD, and you will find that on various. What's the thing I was listening to it on lately? One of those music services,
like Spotify.
Spotify,
okay,
yeah,
there you go.
something like that. You will find the CD, because the last rock and roll show ever.
Right.
And you know what? I'm going to get in touch. You just reminded me again. I've got to get in touch with Enzo and see if there's any copies of the physical CD still left, because I want to, I'm doing a new website, and I'd like to offer them for sale. So yeah, you know what? I'll direct you to some stuff anyway. Yeah.
Now you mentioned Comfort Sound. I've had Doug McClement here to talk about all his great recordings and everything. And so he's an FOTM like you are. That means friend of Toronto Mike. But he worked with Blair Packham. Like how do the Jitters come into the fold here? It sounds like the Raving Mojos and Jitters did lots of gigs together.
Well, no, I mean, Blair Packham is just a guy, like it's local. We're from the same neighborhood, named the same gang. The first band that I was a singer in was called the Heartbeats, and that was with Danny Levy, who was in the Jitters, and I was in the Androids. I remember Blair. I remember us. We used to run a rehearsal space on Yonge Street, just above Tuxedo Junction at the end of Maitland, Yonge and Maitland. And I remember he was going on tour. He was doing a band called Black Slacks. And I remember he came up, we lent him some rehearsal space, or rented him some rehearsal space. But he was I don't know an apprentice. He used to work at Doug McClement's studio. He produced the single that the Androids did, a single, which you can find on YouTube, Roller Derby Queen and Over by the Androids. He was the producer of that, we set up the financing with grant money from the old organization that SOCAN swallowed up, the old organization KPAC. We were all KPAC members, and KPAC in those days used to give you a $300 grant right off the top. Anybody who registered, published songs with them, got this little grant, which was for recording demos of your material. And so we recorded the single on money from those KPAC grants, and Blair Packham was the producer.
Wow. Such a small world. Blair's a great friend of the program. So hello to Blair. So yeah, you're another Blair. Lots of Blairs going on here. And your brother played with the Jitters? Did I get that detail right?
My brother's a drummer. Yeah, he was the drummer in the Jitters, the original drummer. And so I mean, there's a time Blair started the Jitters after the Raving Mojos. I think he sort of realized, hey, if these guys are, I think we were influential in that he saw, hey, these guys can do it, I can certainly do it,
Right.
Yeah, I mean, there's certainly some truth in that. Yeah.
So you mentioned Ken Fox. He's your original bassist, right?
Yeah.
Okay. And you mentioned Kurt. Now, one fact about Kurt, you mentioned a little bit about what he's been up to since the band, but he was in Atlanta Miles's band, right?
He was. Listen, is it too much if I take a little break here? Somebody's knocking at my door, and it's my passport.
You know what? Go to the door. I'm gonna tell people about some partners of the program. Go to the door and join us back. It's okay. That's what I love about the program. So amazing. I've got more questions for Blair, but I just want to let everybody know your fresh craft beer of choice. Forget craft. Your best beer in Ontario is Great Lakes beer. Got it? Drink Great Lakes. Let them know Toronto Mike sent you. Your best Italian food is palma pasta. Eat palma pasta, okay? Do yourself a favor. Recyclemyelectronics.ca. You know the drill by now. If you got old electronics, you go there, put in your postal code, drop it off, and have it properly recycled. Shout out to Ridley Funeral Home and Toronto Maple Leafs baseball. Playoffs are starting now. Go Google the schedule and get to a playoff game at Christie Pitts. I can't wait to be there. Come by, hang out with me. Love the activity here. Okay, let's see if Blair is ready to join us. Receiving this. Oh my goodness, I'm watching. So there is video of this, by the way. So if you're listening to the podcast, I'm recording video, and at some point I'll share it on the Toronto Mike YouTube channel. You really never know what will show up there. You should probably subscribe there and then have these surprises. Speaking of Peter Gross, I just shared the Peter Gross conversation from, when was that? Monday. I'm going to say Monday. This is Wednesday. Okay. Let me tease something here while we wait for Blair. Thursday night at 8. That's August 22nd at 8 p.m. live.torontomike.com. Something very special is happening. All right. Welcome back, Blair. How'd it go there? Everything's okay?
Oh, it wasn't what I was expecting. As my landlord, he's got a fridge that's blocking up the hall that he's trying to move, and he needed a pair of pliers. So
okay, and you helped him out.
Yeah,
so
sorry about that.
Whereabouts do we find you, by the way? Where are you living these days?
I live in Parkdale.
Okay. I was born at St. Joe's.
Oh, really? Yeah, I'm just along the street from there. I've been living here for a while, but I'm waiting for the subsidized housing stuff to come up, and I'm hoping to move into the artist co-op on Lakeshore.
With Lakeshore and what? Whereabouts would that be on Lakeshore?
Lakeshore and it's actually on is it Birmingham Road?
Birmingham.
Birmingham Street, I think it is.
Yeah, so we're only because I'm speaking
and Ninth.
Okay.
Yeah. 9th Street.
You ready for a mind blow? Without getting too specific. That's called New Toronto, that neighborhood, and I'm speaking to you now from New Toronto.
Oh, cool.
So after the recording, I'll let you know exactly where I am, but I could, if you said, hey, meet me, if you were there, you're not there now, but if you were there and you said, Mike, I got a CD for you to rip to MP3, come get it. I think on a bike, I could be there in 90 seconds.
Yeah. Great.
Okay.
Oh, cool.
So let me know when or if you ever end up in New Toronto, and I'll let people know.
I'm on the waiting list, and I'm really looking forward to moving there. Yeah.
Okay, very cool. So I want to catch up. Maybe now's a good time before I forget. Can I get the story of how you played drums in Teenage Head?
Oh, well, of course, I had met Teenage Head earlier. They were the people that I knew in Hamilton were all contemporaries, actual like classmates and guys who'd known, Gord and those guys forever. And Gord actually came to a Raving Mojos show at a place that used to be on at Bloor and Ossington. Yeah, Bloor and Ossington. And so I met those guys fairly early on, and we opened up for them at the Rondon that used to be here, the Roncesvalles and Dundas, and so yeah, I'd known them for a while. And you remember Gord is a huge sports fan. He watches balls. I mean, he's the kind of guy, we went together to an Expos game when I was living in Montreal. Like they came to stay with me, and we went to an Expos game. And Gord is one of those guys who actually sits there and fills out the scorecard on the way. I couldn't believe it. He's really dedicated guy. Anyway,
yeah.
We had before the Toronto Raptors and all this stuff happened, there was a CBA team here in Toronto called the Toronto Tornadoes, and they used to play at the varsity arena. And that was pretty good, a pretty good level of pro basketball, and it was quite basketball was quite hip growing sport. This is the 1980s,
Right.
and I was at a Tornadoes game, and I looked down on the other side of the arena. I saw Gord sitting alone in a really good seat, like right on the floor. And I went out to find him at the halftime. And we talked for a little while, and he said, like we're looking for a drummer. And I said, well, I don't know if you know, but I play drums. So sight unseen, uh, Dave Raven, he came over to my house, gave me all the Teenage Head albums, and I guess they must have given me some nominal song list. And I set about learning the songs. We went out on a tour that weekend. And
Wow.
yeah, I was with them for the better part of a year.
Amazing. Shout out to Dave Rave, who was here a few months ago telling stories, and that was great too. All right, I have a question. I want to just check in and make sure you're doing all right because I was told, I don't think it's a big secret, but you kick some nasty habits. How are you doing these days?
Oh, geez, you know what? I've given up everything. I don't smoke cigarettes anymore. The worst thing I did was the thing that I most regret. The only thing I really regret is cigarette smoking. I think it was I mean, I'm going to live and die with lung disease for the rest of my life. And that's really horrible. But, I mean, all that stuff, that's now years ago.
Right.
I've stayed on a methadone program, but I mean, I'm so far from everything that's just out of the only reason I'm still on a methadone program at this point is just long habit and like I feel secure being there. But I mean, other than that, I haven't done hard drugs in 20 years.
Good for you, man.
More maybe. Yeah.
Good for you.
Yeah.
And obviously, so Raving Mojos end in 1985. Okay, I happen to know that was almost 40 years ago because I'm doing the math in my head.
Yeah.
I'm really good at math. Give us a little, obviously, just give us a little vibe of like what fills your days, what you've been up to, what art you've been creating.
Well, I'm really interested. I'm a painter. I do fine art painting for better or worse, and yeah, that's my focus. I do an awful lot of it. Working to be good at it. It's more difficult than anything I've ever done before because I mean, that's why there's so much bad painting in this world because it's so difficult to do, and hardly anybody's ever any good at it anymore. And most of the modes of study have become lost over time. So yeah, well, that's what I do. But I mean, I've done a bunch of stuff. I had another, I don't know if you know, I had a whole other career as a Cuban musician in the 1990s.
Well, I did hear about the Cuban Sun Band.
Yeah, yeah, Son,
Son, yes, son, yeah.
Son,
Son.
Son, yes.
Okay, thank you. Okay, that's interesting. Clave Congo, I probably butchered that too.
Clave Congo.
I'll fix it in post, right, Blair?
Mm. Yeah, sure.
I'll take another run at that. So you mentioned you're working on your website, but is there a place people can go if they want to check out your art?
Just look at my Facebook and my Instagram page. I'm posting I post current oil paintings that I do. I don't post drawings and stuff or I used to post just everything I did when I first started, but I mean, it was a lot of experimentation. I was doing abstract, modern, like I was really playing around with just the idea of putting paint onto canvas and like, what do you do first? My first, like the first thing I tried to do, for example, was, you're just trying to put paint on canvas is difficult enough. How do you do that? And I thought, well, what would the Ramones do? So I got a big house painting brush, a 2-inch house painting brush. and I started painting fairly distinct and even-sided, rectangles, with color. I mean, that was it. And I said, "Oh, what the simplest thing you can do, just like the Ramones would do with, 3 chords." I started off, and those count as abstract. That's abstract art, and I worked through and found the first thing that I found what I was sort of okay at was landscapes, cityscapes. This is my first good painting was a cityscape. And so I worked on that for a while. And then, of course, I used to go take the night classes up at Central Tech, which is Central Tech. The art building at Central Tech is the finest art facility in the country. It is a beautiful building that was built for art, and they're completely wasting it. They're not using it really anymore. And that kind of idea of art is, I guess, no longer popular. So, but they're wasting this beautiful, beautiful building that they should be using. I'm speechless at how badly they have wasted this great resource. Anyway, I took classes up there and got into life studies, and that's
cool.
Yeah, that's what I do.
Very cool here. Any chance? What about music? Any chance for another Raving Mojos reunion?
Music is gone. Unfortunately, I won't give you the full sour thing, but music is very difficult, very hard on people. I got to an age where I think it's just a little bit, they say I do have lung disease from smoking cigarettes. I smoked cigarettes for 50 years. 50 from the time I was 11 not quite, 49 years, till the time I was 60.
Wow.
So I haven't smoked in 5 years now. And, music's a bit rough on me. I'm not sure. I still have a guitar and I still pick it up occasionally. I think maybe I'll get my fingers back into shape and learn some more about guitar playing. But no, I've sort of had like there's a lot of feelings of betrayal and stuff that are hard to get over. And like putting together a project is a difficult thing. I put together 2 really good projects in my life, and that in itself, just getting that together and spending the time on getting a good band together is a hard thing to do, in that it takes time. Like you can do it. And I just don't know if I've got the feeling for the time anymore. I don't know if I have enough feeling for it.
I thought you were going to say you didn't know if you had the mojo to make it happen.
Yeah, I don't have to. There you go. There you go.
First reference I know of to mojo was The Doors, L.A. Woman. Because then you hear Jim Morrison, he goes, Mojo Rising.
Yeah. Well, actually, no, usually it's I Got My Mojo Working, which is an old, it's old Muddy Waters.
Right.
And there's other, Muddy Waters, the old chess blues. I don't know who that, maybe it's a Willie Dixon song, but there's also a line in the film, in the song Manish Boy, where, he says, I got a mojo. Is it a mojo tooth? It's some sort of art, some sort of magically invested artifact.
I think
got a mojo hand. Is it a mojo hand? I'd have to go back and listen to it. Yeah.
Got to bring it back.
It's an old blues word. Yeah.
I know on The Simpsons, the monkey that was supposed to do all the work for you is named Mojo, but pray for Mojo, I think he said.
Ah, okay. Yeah.
Do you think, Blair, just before we say goodbye, do you think the Raving Mojos get the respect they deserve for what they were for that period in the early 80s, where you have Steve Kanes, who would go on and be president of Warner Records, telling everyone who will listen that the Raving Mojos are his favorite band of all time.
In that kind of sense, yeah. When you tell me a story like that, yes, I do know. Or when I see when I see like Tomorrow Is Too Late, when somebody writes about me and somebody I don't know, this isn't a friend just being nice, writes, should have been huge.
Right.
Yeah, or, I went and Steve from the Goofs introduced me to some people I hadn't met before and was just, going on and saying, hey, this guy was the greatest front man I ever saw. Yeah, from people who matter, yes, I do, and it's really gratifying what people say. It could be a wider group of people, but the people who matter, yes, they more than I'm really humbled by some of the things people say. Yeah.
Well, I'm a big Blurton head, okay? Big fan of Ian Blurton here.
Oh, yeah.
Change of Heart. And he's the kind of guy, I know on Twitter, for example, I tweeted you were coming on. He liked it right away. Like I know he's listening now. By the way, Ian, if you ever want to come back and chat, would love it. But I wonder how many Toronto-based bands were inspired by Raving Mojos. Like I would love to, obviously I don't know how you could ever know, but how many bands went and saw, just like you talked about going to the Ramones and then like, I got to do that. Like how many people saw Raving Mojos in downtown Toronto and said, I want to do that?
Enough. And again, it's probably the same as what I just said.
Yeah.
Significantly and with some people who had, if you don't mind me saying, exquisite taste. So
I don't mind. Hey, I'm sorry that I'm late to the party. Like again, that's why I would love to hear whatever music was recorded in whatever studio, like whatever survived. I would love to hear more of it because I kind of catching up now. I missed the scene, and now I'm catching up, so I can get off Black Cars and I can get on Raving Mojos. So
okay, well, listen, give me over the next week. I'll send you some links.
Amazing. So final question. You were amazing, by the way. You kind of painted a nice picture of the scene. Who were the Raving Mojos? What you're up to now? But I'm wondering, what did you think when this guy like started sliding into your Facebook and LinkedIn DMs, like saying, I want to talk to you? Like, what did you think? Do you think, who's this weirdo and why does he want to talk about the Raving Mojos? Or I'm wondering how things looked from your side of the...
No, I just, just another thing. Somebody, well, you mentioned Blair Packham, so
right,
it made sense right away. I thought, okay, no, this is obviously someone who's serious doing so. You wouldn't be talking to Blair Packham unless you were serious and really doing something. And, and I'm just flattered that anybody wants to let me tell the story because I like telling the story. I like talking and I like telling the story of what Toronto was. I was really lucky to have grown up in Toronto at that time. It has its faults, but I mean, Steve Leckie once said, and I think it's somewhere on the Colin Brunton movie. I think somewhere in there, he's saying to a crowd at the Turning Point one night, he says, "You people are idiots. If Talking Heads had come from Toronto, they would have been remembered as the worst band in town, and you would have never heard from them again after the first 3 gigs opening for the Viletones." And you know what? That is the fault of Toronto. We're not very supportive, but we know our shit, and we're very hard on people. And it's an interesting place to come from because if you got anywhere at all, you can bet you were good. Yeah, a very culturally hip town, Toronto. So I like telling that story.
Well, thank you for this so much. Really appreciate it. You got a friend now here in New Toronto, so when you do finally end up in New Toronto, let me know. I'll buy you a coffee. And you know what else? I'll get you some lasagna from Palma Pasta because you deserve a lasagna from proud sponsors of the program. So I'll take care of you.
All right.
But Blair, thank you so much for this. I really, really appreciate it.
Oh, you're more than welcome. More than welcome.
And that brings us to the end of our 1538th show. You can follow me on Twitter, Blue Sky, all over the place. I'm at Toronto Mike. Just go to torontomike.com for all your Toronto Mike needs. Mike at torontomike.com if you need to send me an email. Much love to all who made this possible. That's Great Lakes Brewery, Palma Pasta, RecycleMyElectronics.ca, the Toronto Maple Leafs baseball team, and Ridley Funeral Home. See you all tomorrow, Thursday, August 22nd, 2024. Very special secret episode recording at 8 p.m. You can watch us live at live.torontomike.com. See you all then.
Well, I wanna take a streetcar downtown, read Henry Miller and wander around, and drink some Guinness from a tin. 'Cause my UI check has just come in. Ah, where you been? Because everything is coming up rosy and green. Yeah, the wind is cold, but the smell of snow warms me today. And your smile is fine, and it's just like mine, and it won't go away. 'Cause everything